Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Marcy Neumann. Hi, Marcy.
Hey, Kathy. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. So excited to be here. We have so much to talk about.
Oh, yeah. So this, hopefully as many people as possible, please share this one because this is going to really be some uplifting and exciting ways to look at this reality right now. So if you don't know Marcy, I'm going to try to explain her a little bit, but I think I'm going to need help. Well, Marcy is going to talk about that she's been doing this work for over 50 years as a spiritualist minister. But she's also an RN. She's created a kind of Reiki called Cell pH Love Reiki, which I want to hear about that.
Sure.
She's an energy specialist and she's an intuitive life coach. She's a certified hypnotherapist, which is amazing during all this time now where people are wanting to release their traumas, and an author, and she's a host. And she just told me she's was just filmed in a documentary and so Marcy, why don't you add into the little bit of data that I just shared about your journey, because I know you have an exciting thing to share today about your journey, but for people that don't know you and they want to know your reason why you do what you do, could you share a little bit about that?
Oh my goodness, a little bit of a lot of it. So I've been on this journey my whole life, and frankly, I really had a great awareness, even as a young girl, that I was connected to something much greater than myself, and certainly a lot more than what other people told me about the world that I was living in. And how that happened for me was that as a young girl, I had a couple of past life visions where one was actually physical, where I've told this story a number of times. I'm just going to give a little synopsis, but I was putting on leather single blade ice skates for the first time. I was about 9 years old, and I was had been skating on these double track skates, that strapped to my boots for the longest time. But the moment I put these new skates on, I started to have visions of myself as a ice dancer. And I went out onto the ice, and I should have fallen right away on my butt because it was so difficult on those single blades. But something took over, and I saw myself in this beautiful chiffon costume, and I was dancing with a man in a tuxedo, and we were both wearing ice skates. Now, at the time, I may have never even seen this before in real life, but I started to glide over the ice as if I was dancing, as if I was being led in the dance. And I remember just totally being immersed in it, like it was perfectly natural. And then all of a sudden, one of my brothers started to laugh and said, "What do you think you're doing?" I fell flat on my butt, and I had to crawl off the ice. And when I took those skates off, I had this yearning in my heart. I felt like I was giving up a part of my life. Anyway, so I'd had a number of those experiences as a young girl. And so by the time I got to high school, I had a very different perspective on things. And I actually became sort of the go-to person for all of my friends who were going through regular teen issues. And then I started to become the go-to person for some of their parents as well. They just wanted my perspective on things. So the other part of my story is that at the time I was actually um, planning on touring the country as part of the national choir. And the tour was supposed to end up in the White House, and we'd be singing for the president. And so one weekend before I was getting ready to go, I went to visit my cousin who was in nursing school, and we went to a party. And I had so much fun at the party, and the interns were so cute. I decided I'm going to nursing school. So I chopped the whole thing with touring the country as a singer in the chorus, and I went to nursing school. Well, like I said, I had never wanted to be a nurse at any time in my whole life. And when I was on the floor for the very first time, I remember walking on, and it was a orthopedic ward, and I fainted, passed out right to the floor. And needless to say, my instructors didn't have too much hope for me. But as it turns out, I absolutely loved nursing school and I loved the science of it. But I also felt that there was something missing. Every time we would go through these, intensives, learning about different systems, I knew there was something more. And so, as the universe works, as God works, there was a spiritualist church just a mile or so from my nursing school. And so, as I started to explore that more, I decided that I was going into their ordination program. And so I was trained in hands on healing, mediumship, channeling, and a lot of what we now refer to as energy medicine. And so in 1974, I not only graduated from nursing school, but I was ordained as a spiritualist minister. And what I can tell you is that those two credentials opened doors for me that just were not available to my friends and colleagues. And it started this incredible career of really pioneering in this field of being a liaison between those two worlds and recognizing how powerful they are when they work together, but when they are working within universal truths. And so it really became my path.
That's so amazing. So you must have been one of the first nurses, because now it's fairly commonplace that nurses, RNs, or naturopathic nurses take Reiki
Yeah.
and learn energy medicine as a non-chemical way to control pain.
Yes.
But that had to be, you must have been on the front lines. So how did you mesh two worlds? Because right now we are in two worlds.
Yeah.
And the way that at least in 1974, I was still hiding my bigger knowing. I was trying to fit in.
Yeah.
And so most people now, it feels safe to come out and play.
Right.
But how did you juggle that so that you could use your intuition and your sight, because you would be able to read energy and read what was happening in the room as much as what was being said?
Yeah. What a great question, Kathy. So as I'm just reflecting on it, what is really coming up for me is, and this is so much a part of my message, there's so much of our path, our purpose, that we don't have to try to figure out. The universe just lays itself at our feet every time we say yes. So what happened was, as a graduate nurse, I was placed on nights, of course, right? Low woman on the totem pole. So what they didn't realize was what a privilege it was for me and a blessing for my patients, because I was working on a post-open heart and neurosurgery floor. So all of my patients had had open heart surgery and had had neurosurgery as well, trying to fix their brains. So what would happen is, because both of these sectors came into these floors post-op, they had just lived through the most traumatic experience of their lives, right? Imagine the fear at that time, right? Going into open heart surgery or neurosurgery. And so they had a completely different perspective on life and had a sense of how precious it is. And so I started to have these little groups that I would run in the visiting room, and the patients who were able to be mobile would come down. My aide would watch over the floor, and we would have these discussions. And so much of it really was based on afterlife. Like, what happens when you die? What were your fears? What have you learned? How are you going to live your life differently? All of these things. And then what started to happen is that the patients' families wanted to come in for these discussions.
Wow.
And so they would make all these excuses about why they had to be there overnight with their families. And it soon grew. And of course, you can't, keep that sort of thing under wraps. So it started to get around, and those groups grew and grew and grew. And so I would set aside my break time every single night, and I would just hold these groups where people were both eager and welcome to talk about their deepest fears. And so many of them, while they were in the hospital, had visitations of loved ones that had passed over. So
Wow.
many of them, yeah. And so in that safe space, and I'm covered in God bumps, in that safe space, they could share these experiences. And I helped to let them see how real that is, that there is no separation, and that our loved ones are always with us, and what a great healing tool that was for them.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so you basically had a pulpit.
I had a pulpit. That's right.
And so, and you were just being totally guided by your connection to source. And I still think that fear of death is the biggest fear that humanity has. So
Absolutely.
you were 50 years ago.
Mhm.
Wow, 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 wow. Well,
Crazy.
wow, thank you
It's
for all of
crazy.
your years. Wow.
Yeah.
And this is what people I'm hoping that people will get out of all of this conversation is your attitude and your can do contributions. They
Yeah.
are, no matter how small you think they are, they're great. And they
Right.
add to the overall love frequency that's here. But
Mhm.
Marcy, I want to ask because I think right now a lot of people would really benefit from your perspective of life. You just shared with us that that your attitude, your concept was, how do I serve?
Yeah.
And that alone gets us out of the depression and and any being off course. But what would you say to people right now about being empowered compared to 50 years ago,
Yeah.
or even 20 years ago, or
That's right.
even pre-COVID? I mean, how would you because I think I'm hoping that we're going to inspire so many people with your answer. I know I'm inspired by you, so
Thank
I'm
you.
hoping that your answer can help.
So, as I said, one of the most important things for us to remember is that so much of this we don't have to figure out. And that's where I think the greatest healing within us takes place, because no fault of our own, and even, just no fault of anyone in particular, but we've had this very strong patriarchal influence over us that has limited us in a lot of ways. And so I think every step along the way, we are given these opportunities to simply say yes to the consciousness that is within us, that consciousness of love. And when we say yes, I want you to know you can't even imagine what's going to happen. So 50 years ago, I mean, it's mind-boggling to me, but if I look at this entire journey, I've been asked to teach medical students, to create programs for brain injured adults, for hospice, for surgical centers, for doctors' offices, in other words, every step along the way, as I evolved and became more and more confident in the truth of what I was sharing, anything that I could ever imagine in terms of possibility was offered to me. I could have never imagined any of those things. Never. And what happened for me was that, again, every step along the way, all I looked for was, number one, how could I stay out of my own way? But number two, I started to recognize, and this happened probably about 25 years ago, I started to recognize how essential the integration of all the systems are. But the most important thing was our ability to love ourselves. In other words, our ability to accept ourselves as divine beings having a very sacred mission. And as you said earlier, Kathy, whether that is, as in the smallest, what you would consider to be the smallest offering of service, or the largest, it doesn't make any difference. There is no greater or lesser in the universe. It is just saying yes. But what I started to realize was that in order to say yes for myself, I had to love myself in a way where I could accept that even though my path took me in directions that were frowned upon by others. I remember my mother telling me that I was working for the devil. Where so many situations, including my marriage, I was expected to stay very small and not talk about such things so that people wouldn't think that I was different or strange. And so, I would have these little ways of just, sort of keeping quiet and yet making sure I was sharing what I wanted to share. And, they were just little band-aids on these parts of me that were so powerful that they couldn't be contained. And this is what the message is. Every single one of us has this aspect of us that is clamoring to get out. Clamoring.
Yep.
And our obligation in this lifetime is to give it permission to do that.
Perfect.
Now, what I want you to know is that you will disappoint a lot of people when you stop living up to their expectations. You will start to really fall short of those expectations when you no longer are governed by their criteria. And so this is really, I think, how we're meant to be in this world. And as I said, the most incredible thing that I've learned is that I cannot even imagine what is ahead of me, but I have learned to anticipate with sheer delight how spirit is going to show up in my life.
Isn't that beautiful? That's what I love about you, because you can tell there's this childlike excitement about the next steps instead of fear, and putting the energy that way versus the fear way and the victimized way.
That's right.
You know, that's really it. So tell us a little bit, because I think a lot of the people that are following this wonderful platform, they're working on self-love. I think self-love is a huge aspect of abundance. And you have all these people talking about law of attraction and abundance, but it really starts with going inside and seeing all of the things that you need to come to peace with and love yourself anyway. I've been fortunate enough to be a volunteer for IONS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And in all of the near-death experiencers that I've talked to, almost all of them said when they went to the other side, they judged themselves. God, there wasn't a white-haired man with a beard sitting on a throne judging you. You get to look at yourself and judge yourself. And so with that in mind, you can clean that stuff up now, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I love IONS as well. It's near and dear to my heart. And I've had 2 near-death experiences.
Wow.
And what has really come to the forefront for me in those experiences was in each how I had choice. And this to me is maybe one of the greatest gifts that this love has given us. And it also put me in awe of this love itself, that it is so sure of itself that it can give its own creation choice, which means I can run off and be the actual, you know, opposite of what I've been experiencing on my path. I can deviate in so many different ways. And I actually can share a story about that. And it doesn't matter. I'm always coming back to love because that's our true nature. So for me, knowing that, it also gives us permission to live life. You said before, Kathy, that you think it's, you know, the fear of death is one of the most, you know, debilitating aspects of so many people. And I believe it's true, because when you have a fear of death, you're actually afraid to live. You will always hold yourself back. You will not allow yourself to live fully. And so that's the one thing that I've learned is I live fully. When I want to do something, when my heart is calling me to a certain path, and as you probably know, I've moved all around many different places. I just keep following my heart. I go where I'm led. And this ability to create that level of relationship with our higher self is what I think so much of what the near-death experience is there to teach us. It's how to live life with abandon. Because it's how we evolve, and it's how we have all these opportunities to share our gifts. How else could you do it?
Oh, wow. So I had no idea you had 2 near-death experiences, but that makes a lot more sense, how you have stayed in a bigger mindset, the bigger perspective of this reality and the construct of it. So when you're talking about your work, when you do, because you've got the Heart-Centered Woman is a monthly live TV show. You've got lots of things. But do you want to share a little bit about a little bit about that so people could take advantage of that?
Yeah, for sure. So the online television program is with my co-host, Amy Shade. She's another coach from LA. And 3 years ago, we started this program, and the name of it is Live with Marcy and Amy, the Heart-Centered Woman. And the purpose of the program is for us to really bring women's wisdom forward so that we start to, again, gain the confidence to speak freely, to be the embodiment of the divine feminine. The divine feminine, as we know, is being called forward in such a big way. And the reason for that is, from my belief, that we are meant to, well, two things. Number one, we are meant to also usher in or to hold space, provide a foundation for the divine masculine to come forward. And we can see it all over the world, right? The effects of the patriarchal influence that has us at war, constantly in conflict, all of that. We're recognizing that we're fed up with it. This is a time for peace. And of course, it's just in time because we are ushering in the golden age, the age of Aquarius. It's, November 19th, we actually shift into that. So the divine masculine must come forward, and we as a divine feminine play a huge part in that. But in the whole bigger scope of things, we have to ask, well, okay, so what does that mean? What it means is that we are also being asked, again, my belief, that we are shifting from our humanness into our divinity. So I believe we talk about heaven on earth, and actually the name of my company is Heaven on Earth Academy. But we are heaven on earth. Mm-hmm. We are heaven. we are that frequency.
Yes.
So we need to come together in divine union, male and female. And the reason for that is because we must accept the fact that we are the creators.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So a couple of things I wanted to add or suggest my point of view. I think that the divine feminine, a lot of the women leadership had to have a lot of masculine, not necessarily just to play the game in the world in the past. So a lot of what you're offering when you do self-love is rebalancing the divine masculine, divine feminine within, and then it'll manifest out. Right. Because we're out of balance. I think the women have been just as out of balance as the men. And we don't really, we don't want the teeter-totter to go. This isn't trying to be a matriarchy now instead of patriarchy. No. We're trying to be in this middle ground, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what the new earth is calling for. How could we possibly take any of what we've experienced in this, what we call the 3D, right, lifespan, and bring it into a higher frequency? We can't. We have to come into our divinity in order to align with the new earth that we are meant to populate, to be living on, to be living in, I should say, in that frequency.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to let you know Sanine is here, and she said, lovely conversation. And my buddy Elise is here, who's a near-death experience also. Yes, here, yes, divine union as within, so without. This was great so much. Yes. Thank you guys for being here. So when we're talking about this new era, how do you see people getting off their devices? Or, I mean, we had that lockdown period that you had to come to some grips with, whoops, well, game might be over. I had to get my stuff in order. But now we're in that post time where people are really cynical, or what's the right word? Cynical is the word that wants to come out. They're either seeing the world as as out to get them or loving and supportive to them.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's two very different perspectives. How do you see this evolving for this next time period?
So I love your questions, Kathy. Thank you so much. So first off, as we continue to raise our vibrational frequency, we now have access to higher frequencies of energy that also give us access to higher frequency information. So I'm going to use myself as an example. 20 years ago, over 20 years ago now, actually, I had this personal epiphany. And it was an incredible time. But the long short of it is that the result of that was that I ended up leaving behind nearly everything that had defined me for about 30 years.
Wow.
I left my marriage, my home, my job, my community, my friends, much of my family. And the reason was that I had, you know how people call it like the come to Jesus moment?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I was shown that my spirit was dying because I could no longer just placate what was coming through me. And I'm not even going to say unfortunately, but at the time, I was not supported in the parts of me that needed to come forward. And so it really required that I step outside of that world and into the world of asking one question and one question only. Is what I'm doing, how I'm thinking, how I'm seeing, is it serving my highest good? Is it serving my spirit?
Beautiful.
Is it serving the God within me?
Mm-hmm.
And that became my new criteria for everything that I did. What happened then was like the universe laid itself at my feet. And all of a sudden, I started to get downloads for an incredible series of products that were based on the law of attraction. And they were like training wheels to really teach people how to put these principles to work for them. I had no background in business. I had no background in product development. And what happened next was miracle after miracle after miracle. Kathy, I'm going to tell you, at the time that these came through, I didn't even know how to send an email.
Wow.
So I rented an office. I hired a secretary who was very computer savvy. She taught me how to do these things. And in 8 weeks, we had 6 products on the market, and I had already won 4 Best of Show on an international market for new products.
Wow.
So when you ask, how are we going to take, this way of living into this new earth, we don't have to worry about it. We just have to say yes. The universe takes care of the rest. Our job is to continually raise our vibrational frequency so that we have access to what it is that we need. When I think about that time period, I was walking through, I can't even describe it. And it's also when the self-love program was born, the self-love Reiki program was born.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like being in this bubble of miracles, and it just keeps flowing through and flowing through. But it's also when I realized the difference between manifestation and creation.
Okay.
And I believe why this is so essential that we start to embrace ourselves as creators, because we need to move out of the manifestation practices of 3D and into being creators. It's a completely different ballgame.
And so is your product help you cut to that mind view? Because it's a different worldview. When you
Yeah.
create, you're not a victim. You're not projecting out things to other people. Anything that comes into your field is a gift in some way and allows you to work on your reaction to it if it triggers you, or embrace it, right?
Yeah. And again, it is accepting that our fields are forever contracting and expanding, and how essential each part of that is. And that everything that we need in order to create is flowing through us. We're not reaching from the outside and trying to make it work. We are, or contorting ourselves to make it work. We are simply expanding so that that energy can flow through us, through the, from source, through our heart space. And then the contraction is like the bringing it out into the world, right? So when we understand these mechanisms and we understand that the universal law has been put in place to support us 100%, then we can really start to embrace that everything is always working in our favor, even if it is that opportunity that you spoke of a few moments ago, to see things differently. And I love so much what A Course in Miracles says about our experiences here on the earth. So simple. Every experience is one of two things. It's either a call for love or an answer to the call. When we remember that love is not something outside of us, we can turn that faucet on or turn that faucet down. It's always about how we are allowing Source to use us, to come through us, and to create from the highest vibrational frequencies that we give it access to through us.
Perfect. Yep. Yep. I understand. And I love that you had this insight and acted on it. I feel that there's so many people get the memo, get the download,
Mhm.
and they don't act. Could you speak to that at all? Because
Yeah.
I know as a coach, your talents are, I'm sure that you're bringing all these different aspects in to help your people. Could you
Yeah.
talk about how you motivate or keep people that go that get all excited at the beginning of a project and never finish it? Could you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah. So, what I learned, and again, this came really so clearly for me when I was working. Here I am creating a manufacturing company. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, and yet I'm, you know, winning these awards all around the world. And so, what was so clear to me is what I had done. Number one is I learned what it really calls for when I say a self love journey. Self love is not going for a pedicure. That's not self love, that's self care. Self love is allowing yourself to be drawn into your discomfort zone. It will always take you into areas that you're frightened to go into.
Mm,
And the reason for that is that in order to step over that threshold, you have to let go of the programming that would tell you that you shouldn't be doing that. And so when I'm working with my clients, one of the most important things I believe that I do is that I teach them how to discern energy. This is really what helped me to move forward. And as I shared earlier, I started to just ask, is this serving my highest good? Is this serving my spirit? And the discernment was I needed to recognize which voice was answering me, because the ego's very clever, right? It is a master of disguise. So I knew that I couldn't trust necessarily what I heard. I had to trust what I felt. And so I started to come inside for everything. Oh, how does that feel? How does that feel? How does that feel? And so as I learned to discern the energies and discern the energy of those voices in particular, what it gave me was the ability then to discern energy that was coming into my field, but also discern the energy that I was putting out into my field. And so what has happened now is that when I'm out of alignment with my highest frequency, I am so uncomfortable, Kathy. I can't help but to bring myself back in as quickly as possible, because to me, it's like nails on a blackboard now. It's
Oh,
unbearable to me. And so that's what I work with my clients, and to give them the ability to understand that there is nothing about your past that needs to determine your present or your future. Our power as creators is that new life begins every nanosecond we choose it to.
beautiful.
What that means is I can choose right in this moment if I'm feeling like I'm really being attacked or in victimhood or whatever it is. And I don't have to figure out why. All I have to do is pivot and start to realign myself with higher vibrational frequencies, and a whole brand new world will open up.
Okay, so I have a question then. So I do think that the looking at your shadows and your triggers have
Mhm.
so much potency, and we're being forced to see society's shadows and triggers as long as and ours in that preview right now. Um, what I found is that when you go in and process whatever that thing is, you're so afraid, there's shame or blame, there's some emotional baggage with it, that once you push through it, there might be a few tears, but then that freedom, the opening afterwards, it's very short for the amount of time you've been putting the energy to hide it or to stuff it, compared to what happens when you release it. Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Uh, yes and no.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so there are certainly experiences that I've had, like when I was leaving my marriage and I was working with a therapist who specialized with women in transition. I saw parts of myself clearly, where um, as they came up, right, I was able to identify. And from my perspective, this is what I look for. I identified them as the moments that I betrayed myself,
Ah,
not what anybody else did to me. That was the moment I betrayed myself. And in that moment, and this was very interesting, because this is actually what was my realization. I realized that in that moment that I recognized my self betrayal, the call then was for how do I realign with my truth? And so, what's in that gap between where I was and where I wanted to be is what I've learned how to process in terms of self forgiveness. And that's another thing I work with my clients.
mhm.
Because from my perspective, the only thing we need to do is to recognize when we're out of alignment with our true self, our higher self. And so the tears that I shed now, rather than shedding tears for loss or what I did, or my tears are now for in gratitude.
Oh, beautiful.
My tears are filled with gratitude. It's like I sometimes I want to throw myself on the ground. And it comes in those moments of realization of, oh yeah, I kind of lost my way there for a moment. And then I just turn back towards my heart, back towards the God within me, and I weep. But the weeping is from gratitude that it's always there, always holding me, and always ready to show me my next move.
How perfect. How beautiful. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
amazing.
gratitude is the key to the
Mhm. Yeah,
gratitude and appreciation are the frequencies I think are the highest. So
yeah,
whenever we can go, and I think that's what happens if you have a trigger from someone, what someone said or did, you get to see where that is in you, what caused that, and then clear it, or you don't stuff it, you actually experience it and then let it go. It's not yes, no.
yeah. No, I do. I'm a firm believer in allowing ourselves to feel the emotion. But what happens so often is that in the feeling of that emotion, there is this trigger, which is controlled by the ego, that tells you that there's something wrong with you.
uh,
Somehow you're not enough. You deserved that. You were stupid. You, weren't pretty enough, weren't funny enough, weren't smart enough, whatever it is. The ego always comes in. And that's why so often when you have a trigger, you go into a downward spiral. The creator in us tells us that that's not necessary. Feel the emotion, but
right.
feel it only so that you know that number one, you have a choice. Okay. And number two, that as you allow that emotion to come through, that it's simply a call for you. I say it's like that, for the Muslims, the call that comes over the loudspeaker to go into prayer.
Uh-huh.
That's what it is.
Beautiful.
Come
That's
back into alignment. Oh, yeah, that's right. And then those tears, and I'm telling you, for me, it happens just like this. Now, those tears that I was shedding because I'm not enough in some way become tears of sheer gratitude.
Oh, that's so cool. And then it's the joy that
Joy.
comes after all of this is where this becomes a playground
That's right.
instead of a prison. Anyway, I wanted to ask one more thing about your journey and how you see being a grandmother in this. Okay, so the indigenous. Okay, no, well, I'm a grandmother. Okay, so the indigenous have always,
Mhm.
at least American indigenous, I think other cultures as well, have always honored the wise woman, the crone, the what did we call, we used to in work, when I worked in corporations, we would call the person that had been there the longest the historian, because they knew how we used to do everything. um, how do you see your role, and I'll probably chime in maybe, but how do you see your role for this phase, this next 10, 20 years, of sharing? Because I think eventually the viewpoint's going to be to come back to the grandmothers, or the knowledge and the perspective that they hold. Do you want to speak to that?
So, first off, Kathy, you have no idea like how intuitive you are.
Oh, yes,
And
I do.
well, then I need our audience to know how intuitive you
Oh,
are
okay, thank you.
and how you've tapped into this energy frequency that's so much a part of me. First off, let me tell you that the epiphany that I had, I spoke of earlier, actually happened in a teepee.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. It happened, yeah, when I would least expect it. And it was so profound that I had no choice. As much as I wanted to sweep it under the rug, I had no choice but to follow that new path of leading out of the life that I had been living. So that's number one. Number two, starting in January, I have a new show that will be starting, and it's spiritual parenting in this modern world.
perfect.
And I am 100% with you. I was privileged, so privileged last year. I was hired by this little program in Florida, Melrose, Florida, and it was a program for homeschooled kids. The name of it is Four Corners. Anyway, I was privileged to be asked to create a program for them. And I worked with kids from 6 to 8, 8 to 10, and 10 to 12. And my whole purpose was to teach them how to love themselves,
Beautiful.
to teach them what that really means, which means to accept yourselves as creators, creator beings. So I taught them all about themselves as energy beings, their power, how to discern energy, how to recognize when the energy is going in a certain direction that is not going to have the results that they want, how to communicate with themselves, with each other, with nature, and how powerful they are, how important they are to themselves, to their families, communities, and of course to the world.
Wow.
And I wasn't only privileged enough to develop the program, but I was privileged to teach them.
Oh, wow.
And I'm telling you, it was a life changer for me. It was the most wonderful experience. And I can only hope that for every child around the world. I mean, it took me into places where I couldn't even imagine, but it also reminded me of that child that is within each and every one of us and how important that we keep them alive. And so when you ask me about my grandchildren and my children, it made me laugh because my kids or grandkids won't even talk to me about these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are in this moment entrenched very much in a different kind of world.
Right.
And as you may remember, Kathy, I lost my youngest son, Jacob, back in 2011. And I spoke of him when I was in Colorado. But he was the one child that really got me. And in fact, he was a healer himself and an incredible, intuitive, and just lived this boundless life. And I often wonder, like there's such I guess, dichotomy between my remaining children and grandchildren in the way that he lived his life. And all I can say is that I know, and this goes for anyone, regardless of where they are in their level of consciousness, that I want to encourage everyone to just be authentic and open and learn to speak from your heart because you are planting seeds wherever you go. And just because someone isn't ready to hear you now or take you in, maybe you're too much for them, don't let that shrink you down. Let it be incentive instead to expand and to continue to evolve and really be all that you are.
Oh, how perfect. Yay. I'm going like this in the background. How beautiful, because really that's what we're hoping, that this whole conscious business zone, all of these amazing people that have been on the show for in January will be 6 years I've been doing this, and each one of them, they really had to just be authentically who they were, no matter what the atmosphere was. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go through a lot of pain and suffering. It can be a joyful, well, it is a joyful reunion with yourself, but it's so much, there's so much liberation to it because wearing a costume, that's what I call it. When
Right.
I worked at Arthur Anderson, and here I am, this psychic intuitive, and I'm working around all these people, and I just had to. Oh, I could feel what was going on in the room, but I didn't. I never
Yeah.
said anything. No, you couldn't. That wasn't expected or accepted,
That's
and
right.
it was very competitive. It was very strange to be in management and still have your peers and be competitive with
Yes.
you. It wasn't a team. So anyway, but I think what we're looking at right now is this wisdom that you're sharing about you got it. You got it all. You're creating your own reality. Now go with
Absolutely.
it. And that you have an innate compass
Mm-hmm.
to help guide you through your journey if you'll just use it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And people, thanks for bringing that up, Kath. So people talk about trust and having faith and all of that. And here's what I want you to know. I look at trust and faith as two, and even hope, absolutely incredible frequencies of energy. But here's what I want to promise you, that if you will allow yourself to be in that frequency and go further, to step over the threshold, you step into knowingness. So that faith, that hope, that trust, every step along the way, there's still a little bit of fear, still a little bit of that ego is coming in, and you're wondering if this is going to really work out for you. If you will cultivate the courage to just keep saying yes to where you're being led, and you step over that threshold, you will step into a frequency of energy of knowingness that is nothing that you could have ever imagined.
Beautiful.
It literally is like sprouting wings. You spoke of freedom, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
There is no freedom like knowing. There is just no freedom like knowing.
That's so beautiful. And that was our divine heritage. That's
Yes.
we
Right.
just forgot. That's all.
That's
And
right.
we get a chance to remember. And I think the other thing, because we're going to need to wrap up soon, but I think
Unfortunate.
we'll
We're on such a roll.
we'll do it again and again.
Yeah.
So the thing that I want people to understand is that this really is one of the easiest times to live in, where the media would have you feel that you're in a pressure cooker and it's about to explode and everything. But honestly, we got this. This is an opportunity. This time you can hear Marcy's got podcasts and TV shows, and she's in a documentary, and she's written books. And I mean, this is a time that you can create and create and create to your heart's desire and share. I
That's
mean,
right.
YouTube's free. You can set up a YouTube channel in an afternoon. So, I just want to encourage everyone to shine their light and do the work. And if you are interested, Marcy has a wonderful gift that she wants
Yes,
to
I
share
do.
with us.
And I hope this will encourage you to share this show, because this is an offer that expires November 22nd. And that is, if you use this code in selfloveuniversity.com, you will get 50% off of all of my programs in there. Nothing is being held back. So the code is, this is easy to remember, 50 years. Okay, so years is all capitals. All right, 50 years is the code, and you can use it at selfloveuniversity.com. And again, all of my programs there, this code will work for. And enjoy. Yeah, let yourself just get what you need for that support that Kathy is talking about. You are supported in every direction to be successful in being you.
Well, the thing is honestly, this is such an incredible, generous gift for us because this is the perfect time. I mean,
Yep.
seriously, give yourself the gift of you so you can shine your light bright and shift as many people as you can that
Yeah,
you come in contact with because we're all these blessed beings who have amnesia until
that's right.
we don't.
That's right.
So thank you so much for everything you do, Marcy. And I hope again people will go to selfloveuniversity.com,
Hmm.
put in 50 years as
Yeah.
a coupon, and you have a window of what, 2 weeks? Is that about right?
Yeah, November 22nd.
Okay. Oh, so only a week or so. A week.
I don't know what I would
Yeah,
have to
yeah. Okay.
count. Yeah.
Okay, well, don't delay and share this video so that people will know and they will get a sense of the huge gift that
That's
this
right.
is. Thank you, Marcy.
My
Bless
pleasure.
you.
Thank you
Yes,
so much,
always
Kathy.
always a joy.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. And thank you for everyone in the audience who was here live and those who will be watching the replay. And just know how truly blessed you are because you are loved and cherished beyond all measure.
And we created this game. You just
Yes.
forgot.